All right, good morning, everyone, and welcome to this last meeting, this last webinar for this cycle of webinars in bioethics and phenomenology organized by the philosophy department at California State University. Today, I'm very, very happy to have Professor Alice Pugliese here with us. She's from the University of Palermo, and she's going to present her talk on empathy and trust in biomedical context. Thanks for accepting my invitation. The floor is all yours.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. I am really happy to be here. And I'm particularly happy because I just finished my bioethics class in Palermo, in my university, which was held this year in the frame of a European project involving Palermo together with other 6 European universities. And already by doing this class, I was forced to think about the issue of bioethics as a discipline, an ethical, philosophical discipline that is always very sensible to the space and time in which we develop our arguments. And I think that such international but also global platform like you are providing us at the moment with this series of seminars are really an opportunity to stretch the limits of bioethics and don't let it reduce to a merely political or sociological discussion about singular solutions that are adopted in singular countries about singular problems, but to try to develop an anthropological frame and an ethical frame which can reach perhaps not an universal significance, but still an intercultural significance. I think these are really important opportunities, and only with this in mind we can try to apply the phenomenological method to this kind of problems, because the philosophical reflection becomes crucial, and the phenomenological intentional description of the experiences that are the basis of bioethics become justified only if we try to think bioethics outside of the social political context in which the singular solutions are reached and applied. So I think it's a very important platform, and thank you for having me here. And I decided to start with what I find to be an experience which can be a good starting point for discussing about bioethical problems, and this is the experience of patient-doctor relationship, because it's clear it is not an experience that can give us a basis to discuss every bioethical problems. Today we have problems such as big data problems applied to health care systems and so on, and these are different issues, but still it is an experience that everyone has, and it can provide us stuff to apply our phenomenological method of an intentional description of the experience applied to bioethical problems. And in the last talk by Esteban Marin Avila, I think it's correct, we heard a lot already about trust in connection with hope, and I found it very interesting the way in which he has shown us that both trust and hope are modes of practical reasoning, of practical reason, and they are both involved in the way our reason works in the practical world. He talked about evaluation and decision making and so on. I will explore today a different connection, and this is the connection between empathy and trust, and I will try to identify the meaning of this connection within the frame of the bioethical problem of the patient-doctor relationship. I start my PowerPoint here now. Yeah. Yes. So my claim, in short, is that empathy is surely a great instrument. Oh, perhaps I need to put it down. Yeah, is it better? I cannot see you, but still, okay.
All good. Yeah.
Okay. So empathy is a great instrument in intersubjectivity in general, but also and particularly in medical praxis. And we have a wide range of important analysis of empathy, such as the ones provided by Danzavi in general about empathy in phenomenology, and then Frederick Svenhaus and Petra Gellhaus, Matthew Radcliffe, with particular reference to biomedical problems. But empathy still presupposes a kind of symmetry, I think, between the involved subjects. And for this reason, in order to make sense of the relationships like the patient-doctor relationships, which is characterized by a peculiar kind of asymmetry, we need to involve also all other, or consider all other kind of experiences of Erlebnisse. And in my opinion, trust is one of these important experiences that can provide us with a ground for applying phenomenology to the bioethical problems. And in Esteban's talk last week, trust was explained with reference to vulnerability. He stressed this connection, the connection between trust and vulnerability, and but at the end, we ended up thinking that trust is a synonym of dependency, or at least codependency. It is a kind of bound, an obligation. I will try to show a different side to this problem, and I will try to show how trust can be an empowerment, a reciprocal empowerment between subjects, even a kind of reciprocal liberation. This will be my final claim. And I will start by going back to Aristotle. This is perhaps a homage to a method and education that we, Susie and I, probably share. First, go back to the history of philosophy, and you will find there awesome treasures. So I will go back to Aristotle, and particularly to the Nicomachean ethics ethic, and there Aristotle, this is his ethical reflection, but it is also an exploration of human nature. It is it goes in the direction of this anthropological frame that we are looking for. And in this work, Aristotle devoted 2 books, so a quite large space, to the problem of friendship. And he develops there what seems to me as a kind of phenomenology of friendship, with many significant gradation and nuances. According to Aristotle, there, friendship is a virtue. It's a virtue, and it is a virtue which is necessary to life, he says, because friendship is the horizon of experience within which, and thanks to which, all other goods can be experienced and enjoyed. And this kind of definition connects, in my opinion, the question of friendship to the question of health, because in the same work, health is considered as the precondition, or the condition of possibility of life, and even of virtue. The health and friendship are both condition of possibilities for a virtuous life. In a certain sense, we can say that friendship is a kind of health, or one form of a healthy life. Now, life consists for Aristotle in perceiving and thinking, and in phenomenological terms, we could say that it is entirely a life of consciousness, a consciousness that is itself expressed in different forms, in the forms of perception, of recollection, imagination, judgment, thought. So friendship, the human relationship, is not only a part of life, but it is a special form of life. Aristotle calls it syn-aithanesthai. It means perceiving together. It is a communion of experiences and thoughts that is established to the highest degree in the friendship between virtuous men. Obviously, it is loaded with some kind of prejudice, but still, for Aristotle, this kind of thinking and perceiving together is a way to mutually empower the subjects. The relationship that is established in friendships empowers us in all ages of life. And he describes it like that. He says, it helps the young to keep from error. It aids older people by ministering to their needs and supplement the activities that are failing from weakness. Those in the prime of life, it stimulates to noble actions. Two going together, for with friends, men are more able both to think and to act. So friends are more able to both to think and to act. So the relationship with others is an empowerment of life, and specifically enhances our perception and our action. Friendship is, like I like to say, is a form of augmented perception. But Aristotle's interpretation presents a problem that will be challenge for contemporary philosophy of intersubjectivity, and it is the problem is that Aristotle conceives the ethical relationship of friendship primarily founded on similarity and symmetry. He also talks about asymmetrical relationships, but he always tries to find a way back to a kind of proportionality. He says, in all friendship between dissimilars, it is proportion that equalizes the parties and preserves the friendship. And okay, this is in my opinion, it's a problem. We will see why. Obviously, this is a vision that is radically and always concerned with maintaining symmetry and a kind of cosmic order in human relationships. And from this vision comes the famous definition of the other as another self, heterosautos. The other as another self. The relationship with the other takes the relationship to oneself as a basic model. He says friendly relations with one's neighbors and the marks by which friendships are defined seem to have proceeded from a man's relation to himself. So it is all in the center is always a kind of symmetry and of self perception, of self relationship. Why is that? Because welcoming the other into my own sphere means recognizing him or her as an equal. And this gesture of acceptance and recognition has another side. It has the side that it risks misunderstanding the aspect whereby the other is precisely another, is a different one, is not just another me, but is completely separated and unreachable in a sense. This will be the big problem of contemporary philosophy of intersubjectivity. And obviously this is a great problem for us today in the context of biomedical ethics, because particularly in the medical relationship, the separation between the subjects is as much significant as, or as significant as their capacity to meet and to recognize each other. Because in the medical relationship, we not only meet as ontologically different subjects, it is more than that. It is in the medical situation, we enter the experience, we share the same experience that is the experience opened by illness. But we enter the experience of illness from two opposite points. On the one side, we have the patient who is seeking help, and on the other side we have the doctor who is offering help. So in a certain sense, they both share an experience, but they enter this experience from two completely opposite positions. And even this opposition is it says not enough, because if we apply the phenomenological description of intentionality, we see something more. We see a misalignment that is stronger, because the intentionality of the patient is obviously focused on his or her symptoms, on the needs, on his demands. And on the other side, we have a doctor who is not only focused on practicing medicine. It is obviously somebody who is at work in a broader sense. It is connected. It is intentionally directed not only toward the patients, but also toward the broader healthcare system in which she is framed. It is connected and directed toward other colleagues, even to other doctors that are in different position, in leading position, for example. So the intentional life of patient and doctors is largely and broadly different, even in the moment in which they apparently share the one experience, the meeting, the moment of the meeting. So now the question, is empathy sufficient to describe this complex situation? Let's see what Husserl says. Husserl develops a theory of Einfühlung, of empathy, in the section 43 of the fifth Cartesian meditation. And there he claims that the theory of Einfühlung is a transcendental theory, because it is not limited to the description of the factual circumstances of the experience, but investigates the condition of possibility and even the constitutive consequences of the lived experience of another people. And this was the point that I had in mind during the discussion of Esteban's talk last week. So accordingly, empathy has primarily an epistemic, a cognitive meaning before it can unfold ethical or emotional meanings. We all know that Husserl dedicates to empathy a series of phenomenological experiments that extend into published and unpublished researches, and they aim at unfolding the intentional structures that are presupposed by the Einfühlung. The assumption of this analysis seems to remain the idea that the perception of another, the perception of another is a variation of the perception of oneself. In a certain sense, the extensive Husserlian analysis of Einfühlung can be considered, I think that we can consider them as a detailed answer to the question that are left implicit by the Aristotelian definition. And these are the questions: what does it mean that the other is another me, heteros autos? And how is the relationship with the other me shaped? We can add a further question, which is related to our topic today. What consequences does this model of relationship have for our way of thinking the doctor-patient relationship and medical ethics in general? Can we find answers to this question in Husserl's analysis? Dan Zahavi has pointed out that the Husserlian notion of Einfühlung is multi-layered and difficult to trace back to a single meaning. And this has obviously to do with the kind of manuscripts we are working with. They are Forschungsmanuskripte, or research manuscripts, in which Husserl tests different strategies, and we cannot find a coherent doctrine of empathy in these texts. But what all these strategies have in common is the description of a transfigured perception a kind of non-perception, which Husserl designates as an apperception, he says, apperception or Präsentification, as translation of Vergegenwärtigung in German. All these ambiguous definitions depend on the fact that, on the one hand, it is crucial for Husserl to distinguish appresentation, which is at the basis of Einfühlung, from presentation, which is the essence of perception. But on the other hand, the experience of the other cannot be understood without taking into consideration the interplay between presentation and appresentation. So we need to distinguish the both, but we cannot separate these two layers of empathy. Now, in the case of disease, of the meeting between doctor and patient, so between a normal functioning person, the doctor, and a normally functioning person, the patient. In this case, the correspondence between presentation and appresentation is even more misaligned as we normally have, because the disease operates as a distorting factor of this perception. We can have the case of the appearance of the sick, of a disabled person, which is very much deviating from normality. It can even mean be a moving appearance, but the person can have a still very good perception of herself or her own life. And on the other side, we can have the opposite case. We can have the case of disease, which is hiding behind an unarmed, a normal appearance. Think of psychic disease, think of depression, for example, or other cases in which we cannot at the first sight tell that the person is sick. So all these misalignments indicates the limits, in my opinion, the limits of a paradigm of empathy as the unique basis of the doctor-patient relationship. Another point is obviously the Leib-Körper dynamics. For Husserl, empathy is based on the self-perception of my own body as a Leib, as a sensitive as a sensitive body. And in the case of disease, exactly this dynamics, this correspondence between my sensible body and the body of the other is disturbed, is in a certain sense exposed to disturbance. So, however layered, the concept of Einfühlung does not seem to entirely overcome the prejudice of a substantial symmetry between the subjects, as taken as a prerequisite for their mutual recognition. And exactly this correspondence between my own Leib and the other's Körper, so the two sense of body, is challenged in the encounter between a doctor who is obviously in the full exercise of their function. Think of the body feeling of a doctor in an ER, in an emergency situation. She obviously feels the rush of adrenaline. She's completely focused, and she feels the strength of her body. And she encounters on the other side a person who is not only suffering, but who is experiencing his own body as alienated, as hostile, even in certain sense, who has lost exactly this control over her own body. So the meeting between, the encounter between these two subjects is completely misaligned. They cannot rely on the correspondence between a Leib and a Körper. I hope that we can discuss this kind of examples further in the discussion then. I think that Husserl's theory that bases Fremderfahrung, so the experience of the other, on Selbsterfahrung, on the experience of oneself, has limits, particularly when we are trying to make sense of the encounter in biomedical context. it is not sufficient. The empathy is not sufficient to ground a biomedical ethics, and this insufficiency has been already recognized by several scholars in the phenomenological area. For example, as I mentioned at the beginning, Frederick Spenhaus has introduced the concept of sympathy as a professional concern in order to integrate the concept of empathy. Or, for example, Petra Gellhaus, she refers to a specific concept of care and of to a concept of care ethics to integrate the concept of empathy. These are all very sound very interesting attempts. I try to go back to the experience of trust as a possible starting point for our research. So already last week, we heard a lot about trust in Esteban's talk. He said that trust makes us vulnerable. It's strongly associated with vulnerability. And if we start with this kind of connection between trust and vulnerability, then it is clear that we tend to trust what we already know, what is familiar, what has already proven to be reliable. And in this sense, trust appears as a strategy to stabilize the world we live in. It has been called a social glue. Or by Luhmann mechanism that simplifies practical evaluations and decisions. This is all true and interesting, but associating trust with habit means to understand trust as a factor of restriction of the world, an invitation to restrict our experience to what we already know, what we already trust. Taken in these terms, trust cannot provide, in my opinion, the basis for a biomedical ethics. Why? Because Kate Toombs, you were talking about, and we hope to meet soon, or her professor Richard Zenner, they both described at length, phenomenologically, the experience of illness as a disruption of the familiarity of the world and even of the familiarity of the own body. And this is, in their opinion, and I share this opinion, this is the basis for understanding the experience of illness as a in a first-person perspective. So the first point is to understand the disruption of familiarity. But if disruption of familiarity of the world and of the body is the basis of the experience of illness, then the presupposition of a constant reliability of our bodily functions, which should be the basis for trust in the interpretation presented by Esteban last week, then we are, I think, in a kind of difficult situation, because this reliability of the bodily function is what is challenged in the experience of illness. And recognizing the loss of reliability of the body and of the world forces us either to give up trust as the basis of biomedical ethics, or to rethink trust in another direction. And I believe that there is another profile for which trust is not only a restriction of our experience to what is already familiar, but it can be a decisive expansion of our experiential capacities. We need to focus on the subjective intentionality that sustains trust, and try to read trust as a specific kind of experience of the other, an alternative to empathy in a certain sense. In this context, the distinction between trust and reliability becomes crucial. I think that what we heard last time about trust actually applies to reliability and does not identify the core of the subjective experience of trust. What is reliability? First, reliability indicates an instrumental relationship with others and objects. We, in considering a person or even a thing reliable, we anticipate the adherence of her behavior to our expectations. For this reason, Susie already mentioned last time the correspondence, the experience of correspondence between me and the other. Yes, the thing and the other, when they are reliable, they are in a certain sense no longer seen in themselves, but they are seen in relation to their function. Think of the waiter who brings our food, our meal, or a colleague who informs us on the work protocol. They are reliable, and therefore, in a certain sense, they become invisible. We simply rely on them, but we do not thematize their behavior. We do not thematize our relationship. We do not see the person. As a further point, reliability is based on previous experience. It confirms the past, and in this sense it leaves little room for the actual individuality of the present relationship. It is in a certain sense linked to control, and therefore must be distinguished from trust, in my opinion. Think of the situation in which somebody who should be reliable is not. Then what happens? We engage in tests. We try to verify. We begin to exercise our kind of control, some form of control. We do not go back to the sense of our relationship. We do not try to learn more about the person. We focus on the task that does not be achieved and does not be fulfilled. We focus on the expectations that has been disappointed, and we try to exercise our verification, our tests. This is the relationship that the medical staff has with instruments, with tests, with blood tests, and so on. So these are all crucial in modern medicine, and but they are not enough to fulfill the doctor's task. We certainly live in a time in which technology and objects and tests and objectivity are crucial for medicine, for modern medicine, and it has important advantages. I think an important topic for us, exactly in the connection between empathy and trust, is, for example, medical robots or surgical robots. This machines, this field of research is crucial, and they obviously have important advantages because they do not get tired, they are not burned out, they are objective, they are impartial. But when they are not only, when robots are not only surgical robots, but for example, nursing and assistive robots, then they are required to mimic some kind of empathy. Why? Because it is accepted that some kind of trust is crucial in the healing process. And I specifically use the term mimic because I believe that this kind of empathy, which can be implemented in robots, is somehow secondary. And we can obviously discuss this, and it's a huge field for bioethics, and obviously for all kind of modern sciences. And I think we can discuss it forever, but in the end we will see in the future what kind of problems these robots will be able to solve, and which kind of problems they will rise. So we will simply see, it will happen. And yeah, I think it's an interesting research field. In any way, now for us, what is important for me now is to better understand what trust can be, and how it can be differentiated from reliability, and how trust can integrate and support empathy in the medical relationship. So now, if reliability tends to make the other disappear, as I've tried to show, reliability tends to make the other disappear behind his function. Trust, on the other hand, is characterized as an experience in which the other gives herself as a whole. When I trust another person, I do not select her functions. I do not focus on a specific function. I rely on her as a person, and I therefore implicitly accept also what is invisible to me about her, what I will never know about her intentions, about her motivations. And in this sense, trust fully realizes the asymmetrical relationship we were talking at the beginning, the asymmetrical relationship of which empathy could only mark the beginning. In trust, I have what we call in phenomenology an empty intentionality, an unfilled experience of the invisibility of the other. And this empty intentionality does not configure a cognitive failure. On the contrary, in trusting, I welcome everything that remains private to the other and cannot be represented as an extension of myself. In a certain sense, we can say, if I trust you, I renounce giving you specific instructions on how to handle a situation. I give up control, and I even accept that I will not know how you handle the situation. I will just be informed about the final result. Esteban mentioned last week that Annette Bayer, an important theoreticist and philosopher who has written important things about trust, she interprets this situation as lack of agency, as giving up our agency. Yes, it is true, but I believe that there is another side to it. In trust, the invisible potential of the other affects my own range of action. It becomes an extension of what we can achieve together, or of what I can achieve thanks to her, through her. We can obviously see trusting as a partial surrender of our agency, like Annette Bayer does, or we can see that in trusting others, we become able to act and to achieve results that we could not have achieved on our own. We could not have achieved these peculiar results for a lack of competence or for a lack of time, simply. This is the kind of trust that works not only in the healthcare relationship, but also, for example, when I send my kids to school and I let them be educated by other people, and I won't know what they will do with them exactly to the point. I simply trust that they are educated in ways in which I could not do on my own. So in short, and in the healthcare relationship, in the doctor-patient relationship, I obviously can trust the doctor in the mere sense of reliability, of reliance. And then I put myself in a quite passive position. I restrict my agency, and I say, okay, do something with me. keep me alive, save me. And I am focusing then on my vulnerability, on my needs. But I also can focus on trust as an active relationship, as a form of asymmetrical cooperation that involves a wide range of uncertainty and of invisibility, but at the same time works as an enlargement of my own potential to take care of myself. I am taking care of myself, exactly putting me in the hands of somebody else. This is my decision, and I am taking care of myself by trusting another, accepting and almost embodying the agency and the skills that the other has, and accepting together with this agency and skills also his opacity, his non-transparency, the fact that I don't know what he's really thinking. So surely every medical relationship is a journey, and in this journey both experiences a passive reliance and an active cooperation in trust coexist and are constantly transforming in time. But I believe that it is important to focus on both aspects. In conclusion, trust is, in my opinion, an eminently practical experience of the other, and it is not only realized in representations of another, in mental pictures of the others, but in acting together. And in this way, trust offers a basis for rethinking biomedical ethics as a model of common action that not only respects and tolerates the difference and the opacity of the other, but which probably places otherness at the center of the relationship. I trust the other because I do not have her skills, because I do not know what she's going to do exactly with my illness. And exactly for this reason, I am trusting her. And in trusting another person, I put at the center of our relationship what I could not do with my own means and capacities, the perspectives that I will never be able to assume on my own, and these are still nevertheless perspectives that become part of my universe of action. I expect a lot of objection to this position, which is probably a very optimistic one, but I still believe that it's worth thinking about this second side, different side of trust in a more active way. So thank you. I hope I've not been too long.
No, absolutely. Thank you so much, Alicia, for this excellent presentation. Yeah, there are so many aspects to consider and maybe questions to ask. I open the floor for you, audience, if you have questions.
And you can just I catch up with the chat.
Yeah, this is all me. I'm giving references and so on. I had one little question at the very end, but I prefer the students to go ahead first.
I will have a look at this book about assistive robotics. I think it's
yeah. It's a great book from Michael Brannigan. It came out with Roman and Littlefield now, Caregiving, Carebots, Contagion, Revolutionary Bioethics. It's very good. Yeah, we have to be up to date. All right, so I'll break the ice, then I hope somebody else will follow. I'm basically here connecting the dots because, yeah, your presentation is extremely fascinating. And once again, as it was Esteban's presentation, I see it applicable also in human relationships in general. So in the context of philosophical counseling, in my case. And I was wondering, so in trust, when you create a relationship of trust, is there still space for empathy? Because, right, as you said, you give up on agency, you trust. And so that process of presentification of your own body, of comparison with the body of someone else. Yeah, there is a minimal, of course. We know that there is another human being we trust. But is this lack of agency somehow influencing the space for empathy?
Yeah, I was thinking about trust as a way to stretch the limits of empathy. So as a way to support empathy when all of these processes of presenting and not presenting are not working, because the other person is in a completely different situation. Like I said, the doctor at the top of her game, hopefully in the ER, and the patient at the most low moment of his own agency. So when this misalignment is very strong, I think all these dynamics that rely on a kind of similarity are challenged, are perhaps not broken, but in difficulty, and then trust should kick in. This was my thinking. But still, I think that in a certain sense, this shows that there are several layers of empathy. This has been shown by Zahavi and so on. And there are moments in which we can hope to reach the highest level of empathy, which is also a very cognitively loaded kind of empathy, a kind of empathy in which I learn something about the other, in which I understand her motivations, in which I can really also not only on the basis of experience, but also through communication and other forms of communications, I can really have a cognitive content of empathy. And then there are lower levels, so to say, of empathy, in which all these cognitive elements are lost or are minimal. And there I think you should be able to rely on a kind of perception of the other, which accepts and which presupposes the complete invisibility of the other. The fact that I do not know what he knows. I am not able to assume his perspective. And this could be trust. But yeah.
It's very fascinating. I'm trying to apply, this in, again, human relationships. I'm thinking of people, for example, marriages. One of the two give 100% trust to the other. And then, trust is good, but then things start being unbalanced because, as you noticed, as you said, in trust, you consider the other one reliable. In being reliable, you make it invisible. Empathy becomes minimal. And what happens often in my office when I have couples where one of the two completely gave up on keeping track of what's going on in their lives, this person doesn't see the partner as a human being anymore. Yeah. There's a series of demands that needs to be fulfilled. Yeah. I think that what you're pointing to is really, I know you in your context, you say trust kicks in when you can't. I'm thinking instead, what if you start immediately with trust because you feel that you can't? Women often feel powerless and without possibility to make it. So they give trust to their men. Sometimes it happens without even trying.
Yeah. It's interesting what you're saying, because you're saying trust. I am saying trust is a way to see the other when I have no possibility to actually see the other. Right. And you are saying trust is a way to stop seeing the other as a person who has a separate life from me. And yeah.
You're putting it in a positive context. I mean, in the sense that I'm in a biomedical context, I don't have other options. I have to trust. What if you come from a scarcity mentality? You don't believe in yourself, in your qualities, and so on. You put the trust immediately. You give up immediately on your resources, and this dynamic kicks in. It could be, I mean, your point of view is way more optimistic. I'm applying it.
We should go to conferences as a pair. So exactly. The optimistic and the pessimistic side of trust. Let's work on this.
It could be interesting to see in personal relationships when it becomes a little muddier.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry for having taken this space, but it was really fascinating. Do you have other questions, any of you? Yeah, here's something. How can we consider the trust in ourselves in the healing process? Are there differences between the kind of trust in another person from a phenomenological point of view? Asia asks.
Yeah, interesting. The trust in ourselves, the self-confidence as a kind of trust. In a certain sense, I go back to this concept of invisibility. Mm. I think having confidence in oneself means assuming that I have more resources that I know I have, assuming that I can more than I know I can. Assuming that I will be able to cope with situations that are completely new and unexpected for me. So in a certain sense, trust is, again, for me, this kind of instrument to deal with invisibility. On the one hand, it is the invisibility of the other. And on the other hand, it is the hidden layers of my own personality, the hidden resources of my own personality that hopefully will emerge in difficult situations. And differences between the trust in another person. I tend to think that even our personal identity can be described as a kind of intersubjectivity. This has been already assumed by Husserl in the crisis, in the crisis of the European sciences, and it also goes in the direction of the dialogue between phenomenology and psychoanalysis. So in a certain sense, I would say no, there is no difference because the relationship with ourselves is in a certain sense already an intersubjective relationship, because even in the relationship to myself, I need to take into consideration all the hidden spots, all the opacity and non-transparency that are prominent in the relationship with others. So on the spot, I would say there is no radical essential difference. There will be a lot of empirical and concrete difference. This is true. But for example, sometimes you really need another person, for example, the therapist, or like Susie does, the consultant, or how do you tell, so the philosopher, the philosopher, to explore parts of yourself that you are not able to see on your own. So in a certain sense, the idea that the relationship to the self is at the same time an intersubjectivity, and it needs intersubjectivity to develop, is supported by personal experience, by everybody who has been in a therapy or who has been in some kind of therapeutical path. Yeah, it's the last
time.
last talk, is obviously we are all very tired at the end of the semester.
It's at the end of the semester everywhere.
Yeah,
we have still space for one question if you want. You can take the floor or paste your question in the chat if you want. But this would certainly help because, there's a strong limit to empathy in the doctor-patient relationship. They are so in such an asymmetric position when they encounter each other that, your solution makes sense.
I think this kind of reflection on trust as disconnected from reliability could also be interesting for revising the way in which the doctor demands your trust. Because the doctor's demand for your trust is often based on authority. And it often implies the idea that you must completely rely on me and on my skills. And it shuts off the relationship. If we learn to see that trusting another is always and still a kind of relationship, even if it's a non-cognitive kind of relationship, so shortly, and if we learn to say that it's still a kind of asymmetrical relationship but cooperation, then we can revise this way to demand and to demand trust from another. It is still, even if I trust you, you need to enter into a relationship with me. And I am thinking about developing a program for medicine students on these kind of topics, because obviously it's difficult, and it is always connected with a shortage of resources, of time, on overworking and so on. This is clear, but still it can help, perhaps even mitigating the frustration of doctors when they feel that they are not trusted.
That's a very good point. And also on the other side, the demands of the patients that rebel against the authority and start demanding, so you're the authority, you need to give me this, this, and this. And on
this is a functional relationship.
Exactly.
It is no longer trust, it is reliability. If I demand that I get something.
And on both sides, there are no human beings anymore. There's an explosion of demands and invisibility, which makes you even more hopeless, vulnerable, and so on. That's brilliant, Alicia. Beautiful. Yeah.
Thanks. I hope I didn't kill everybody with too much stuff, as I used to do, apparently. I hope we will have other possibilities to discuss these questions.
I would love to. I will share the video. As it happened with Esteban, I had people from the internet, from YouTube, asking for the email contact. So if any question arises at any point, you let me know if you're willing. Okay, that's great.
And I make a short spot for our summer school. We will have an international summer school on genetic phenomenology in Warsaw this summer, August 15 to 19. And we will work on experience and judgment, and we will have special focus on psychoanalysis as well. So I hope you can join us.
Yeah. Is it going to be in person and online, or only in person?
We will do it in person. Yeah.
Okay. That's wonderful. That would be a great opportunity. Thank you so much, Alicia, and every one of you for joining, even if the semester is almost
killing
over.
us.
Yes. Thank you so much. Have a
Thank
nice
you.
rest of the day. Bye.
Bye.